long-winded? Here we go. I love this. This is great. You never heard that, did you?
What?
The bell?
Not since I got here.
Okay. This is our section dealing with a unique piece of history. Before we get started, a couple of things. Colleen, who just walked out, did a great job working with Alan with regards to that presentation. Colleen Muto, so thank you very much for that. I do want to clarify one thing. Don Elbaum was not there during the Marquis of Queensberry time period, were you?
No, I worked the corner. I wasn't.
And one of the things we're talking about here is a unique piece of Buffalo history. The Battle of Buffalo. It was a heavyweight championship fight that occurred in 1985 in Buffalo. And Don Elbaum, our firm, was involved in a unique experience. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and also get into the life and times of the legendary promoter, manager, boxer, you name it, Don Elbaum. So if we could show just a... Oh, curtain up. Oops, curtain up. We'll get the curtain up and I'll continue to talk. To talk a little bit about the backdrop of what we're going to see. So maybe while the curtain is going up, maybe Nick, set the stage for us as to what it is we're going to talk about. We're going to show a video clip, and then we're going to get into the life and times of Don Elbaum.
Okay, so just as Alan demonstrated that boxing is a fascinating context within which to study fiduciary duties, the same can be said for injunctive relief under New York law. In New York, in order to obtain, let me first say, in the boxing context, injunctive relief has often been sought to stop fights, to prevent a boxer from engaging in a bout that was promoted by another promoter, and to force a boxer to engage in a particular bout that was agreed to previously. These are the common contexts within which injunctive relief is sought in the boxing world. Under New York law, to obtain injunctive relief, you have to establish several elements: irreparable injury, inadequacy of legal remedies, and if you're seeking preliminary injunctive relief, you have to show that you have a likelihood of success on the merits. And if you're seeking permanent injunctive relief, you have to show that you have succeeded on the merits. And in the boxing world, we're dealing with what are called personal services. Boxing is a personal service. So to obtain injunctive relief under contracts for personal services, you have to show that the person providing the services is of a unique and extraordinary talent, which is often the case with top contenders and champions. To set the stage for the blockbuster in Buffalo, there was a series of litigations that led up to it, involving Mr. Elbaum. So, starting back in 1981, Mr. Elbaum and Tony TNT Tubbs entered into an exclusive promotional agreement. But soon thereafter, TNT Tubbs started to fight in bouts promoted by another promoter. Mr. Elbaum, wise as he was, decided to assert his rights and obtained a permanent injunction in the Hamilton County Court of Common Pleas down in Cincinnati, 1982. Sure enough, Tony TNT Tubbs moves out to California. In September of '84, signs an agreement with Don King, and starts to fight on Don King undercards. Mr. Elbaum serves a notice of breach. Don says, you've got a good point. You have an exclusive promotional arrangement. I'll pay you $50,000 and buy you out of the contract. Problem is, he never paid. So Don King promotes this fight in Vegas in March of 1984, and it's leading up to a chance to fight for the World Championship at in the Blockbuster in Buffalo in April of 1985. Tony TNT Tubbs, therefore, is rising in unique and extraordinary value as he moves through these fights. Mr. Elbaum sues in Las Vegas, but it's the day before the fight is set to occur. And Don King had been promoting it for several months. When seeking injunctive relief, the court has to engage in a balancing of the equities and has to determine that monetary relief is insufficient. In the Las Vegas litigation, it turns out that the balance of the equities favored Don King. He had been promoting the fight for several months. His credibility and reputation were on the line. Damage to those results in irreparable injury. And the fight was set to take place the next day. So the lawsuit was a little bit late. The court ruled that Mr. Elbaum could take his percentage of the purse and would be made whole. So the fight went on. Tony TNT Tubbs wins, and then has the opportunity to come to Buffalo a month and a half later. The very next day, however, the circumstances change for the calculation of whether you can obtain injunctive relief. The fight is 45 days away, not just one. Now, Tony TNT Tubbs is the top contender for the World Boxing Association World Heavyweight Championship. Therefore, he's unique and extraordinary to Mr. Elbaum. Don King, at the time, managed nearly all of the heavyweight fighters. He could have put James Bone Crusher Smith up on the card. TNT Tubbs was not unique to Don King. And third, Don King had not been promoting the blockbuster in Buffalo yet as between TNT and Greg Page. So his reputation and credibility would not be irreparably damaged if the fight was enjoined. Mr. Elbaum's leverage immediately improved. He retains Phillips Lytle in Buffalo, commence an action against Don King, and Don King finally settles. The fight can go on, and indeed it did.
It's a great night. By the way, the gentleman here, Joe Messi, if he was boxing today, believe me, he would be heavyweight champion. What a fighter this guy was, man.
All right.
Just, you know, you can still make a comeback, you know that.
Well, the fight did go on, and Phillips Lytle was involved in that, and we're going to show a brief clip of the blockbuster in Buffalo.
Don Chevrier, Angelo Dundee, Carlos Palomino back with you at ringside as we await the decision to determine whether Greg Cage succeeded in retaining his recently acquired WBA heavyweight championship that picked up in South Africa last December, or did the late rally in the final half dozen rounds for the challenger from Cincinnati, Tony Tubbs, impress the judges sufficiently. Until then, he really couldn't pick a winner. The decision has to rest on the last third, certainly, of this 15-round bout. Neither can be confident of victory on point. And Greg Page takes it to Tubbs for the first time in a long, long while.
No, they got to let it all hang out this round. This round might be the round. You never know.
Less than 10 seconds remaining now as Page fires the chopping left hand. Tubbs responds to the combination. Back to the middle of the ropes over on the near side of the ring, and it'll go to the hand.
And gentlemen, we have a unanimous decision. And scoring by points as follows. Judge Joe Sancarpia scores it 145-140. Judge Al Walensky scores it 147-140. And Judge Albert Cremoni scores it 145-142 for the winner. And a new World Boxing Association.
Tony Tubbs has upset Greg Page. Those final 6 rounds likely turned it for him. And Tubbs and his entourage are ecstatic in the center of this Memorial Auditorium ring here in Buffalo, New York. Greg Page simply did not get enough done. Right here in Buffalo, back with more for you after this word from your local station.
Don, who obviously had the exclusive contract to promote Tony TNT Tubbs, it wound its way through the court. It found its way ultimately into the Buffalo court system. By the way, this is Nick Rotsko. Earlier on, we unfortunately mentioned Mike Powers, who in fact was the attorney in charge. Poor Nick, he just, like Rodney Dangerfield, just doesn't get any respect, but he did all the work that's in the book today. So Nick, thank you. and you could actually read his bio. It's in the book. And it found its way into the court system. Mike Powers, who was involved on Philip Slidell's behalf, on behalf of Don and TNT Tubbs, got a settlement. I understand you got a few bucks for it.
Yes.
And we did get paid. Thank you very much. All of that occurred, and I, for one, had my Walter Mitty Life got a press pass, and I was there taking pictures. There's a scrapbook in the room here at the Jackson Center, and I was right there watching all of this, not knowing all of this behind-the-scenes stuff that was going on. But the end result, the following day, Mike Powers told me all about how this had been settled. Fight goes on. Our guy wins, Tony TNT Tubbs, and my fee for all of this was this autographed picture to Greg, best wishes, WBA heavyweight champion, Tony TNT Tubbs. So there we are. Thank you, Don Elbaum. So, Don, the guy who actually sort of weaseled his way into promoting this was a guy named Don King. Now, it's been said that you were really Don King's mentor. You sort of brought him into the boxing game. How did that happen?
Well, it became the biggest mistake of my life. Like I said, I've been apologizing to the world ever since. I was promoting in Cleveland, Ohio, which I was living in Cleveland, and there was and I can't remember the gentleman's name. He was a prosecuting attorney. His first name was George, and he used to come to my fights. I happened to tell him that I was going to Buffalo to put together a show at the Buffalo Auditorium. So, and this was on a Thursday. Friday, I'm in Buffalo. I'm in the office of the Buffalo Auditorium. The phone rings, and I'm in the office talking to people, trying to put this deal together, putting the deal together. And someone says, "Don, this is for you." I said, "Jesus, who knows that? No one knows I'm here." I get on the phone, and it's George from Cleveland. And he says, "Don, I have someone here that I want you to meet, all right? He wants to talk to you. And by the way, this is verbatim what happened, all right?" He said the guy's name is Don King. And I had no idea who it was. I got the phone. There's like 10 people in the office. This is what happened. "Don Elbaum, my man!" He said, "I'm putting a show on in Cleveland. There's a black hospital going under. You don't want it to go under, do you?" I said, "Well, the only thing you could say is no." He said, "When are you coming back?" I said, "Mr. King, call me Don. Call me Don. Don, I'll be back Monday." "No, you must come back today. We've got to get this started. I got Muhammad Ali coming in here to do exhibitions." I said, I kept calling him Mr. King, and he kept saying, "No, Don." I said, "I will be back Monday." He said, "Well, George, and I will be in his office till you get back here." I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Let me talk to George." I said, "George, what the hell is this guy talking about?" He says, "Don, you just don't know this guy, all right? But I'm stuck with him until you get back." 11 o'clock that night, I was back, all right? Couple of you, maybe not too many, have done business with me. We get in, he said, "What do you charge for matchmaking?" I said, "I want $5,000. I said, "I want half of it up front." I can't believe it. In 15 minutes, he had me down to $1,500. So that was he said, "We got to help. I'm doing this for nothing." And I said, "Fine." And the show went on. The place was packed. It was an incredible event. And the stories on him were just I mean, I've got a million stories on him. And I told one last night, which I'm going to share with you that weren't there last night. His most famous saying is "only in America," all right? And how did he get that? I became mesmerized by Don King. I mean, mesmerized. And the guy at that point, whenever I needed money or asked for it, he used to carry $100 bills. When I tell you, in this pants pocket, in this one, in the back pocket, in here, in here. I mean, he probably always walked around with $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 on him, all right? At that time, He sometimes had a bodyguard, sometimes did not. And he said, Don, here, take 3, take 5, never ask for it back, all right? Again, I became so mesmerized with him that I said, look, I said, after this fight, I said, I'm taking you to New York. I'm going to introduce you to Teddy Brenner, Madison Square Garden, Harry Markson, the president of the Garden. I'm going to introduce you to the writers, Dick Young, Dan Parker, and so forth. And he looks at me, he said, what are you talking about? I said, what do you mean, what am I talking about? He said, I'm black. He said, every one of them are white. And I looked at him. Now, let me just give you some background. I'm an only child. I had an incredible mother and father, Max and Sally, all right? From day one, I was brought up, there's no such thing as color. I still live that way. I mean, I just look at people as people. And I was brought up day and night, and that's the way I am. That's the way I was brought up, and I don't even think about that, all right? And I looked at him. I said, what? I said, what are you talking about? I said, this is America. He said, what? And I put my finger in his chest. I said, don't ever say that to me again. I am taking you to New York, and you're going to meet these people. I don't want to hear this crap. I said, you understand? This is America. And he's 6'3", I'm 5'7". He looked down at me. He said, you know, maybe America, maybe only in America. And that's where it started. Next.
Well, Don, you were a boxer and then got into promotion at an early age and a variety of things. And I know time will not at all permit us to go even much into your career, but you did have a unique promotion one time that I'd like you to share, and that is the promotion of to crown the worst heavyweight in the world event. And I think that was in Cincinnati, I think.
No, it wound up in Warren, Ohio.
Okay.
And it wound up by two fighters, James Smith and Boyle. A kid by the name of Spencer and a kid out of Cleveland. And I built it up as the fight between the two world's worst fighters, all right? The place was packed, okay? And it was just incredible. And I had a trophy made, to give to the world's worst fighter. And the picture in the paper, it may have been the Cleveland paper or the Warren, Ohio. And here's the picture. Both fighters are like this, all right? They don't want the fight is incredible. It's a classic. It's Graziano and Tony Zale. It's Manny Pacquiao. It's just unreal. The decision or draw.
So you, in fact, for all you boxing fans, I found this incredibly fascinating. You had the unique distinction of promoting two of the greatest fighters of all time in Pennsylvania, being Sugar Ray Robinson and Willie Pep on the same card. How did that happen?
I saw my first fight, just to give you the background how I got into boxing. My mother, Sally, was a concert pianist. She played with the Cincinnati Philharmonic where I was born. And let's get this, my age, I was born in the last century, so let's leave it at that, all right? And at the age of 6, we moved to Erie, Pennsylvania. I sat down at the piano when I was 4, because my mother used to play 2-3 hours a day, all right? And I just all of a sudden, she played the classics, and she played boogie, which I love that sound, and, then she played some jazz, but, the classics were our number one thing. I started playing piano. We moved to Erie, and, and I'm playing piano, getting lessons twice a week from Mrs. Golf, and, I was considered a child prodigy. I actually played a concert with my mother at the Warner Theater in Erie at the age of 6 with the Erie Philharmonic, all right? Now, my mother grew up in New Bedford and Fall River, Mass. And my mother's brothers were Danny and Moy Greenstein. My uncle Danny, I've got 3 idols I talk about in my life, all right? My father's 1, Sugar Ray Robinson is number 2, and my uncle Danny is number 3. My Uncle Danny was the tough guy in New Bedford and Fall River, Mass. He was known for his street fights. I'm 6 years old, 7, whatever it was. Two guys came up to them and challenged them, all right? I never saw him. He walked up to one, hit him with left hook, knocked him out. Walked up the other, hit him with right hand, knocked him out, all right? This is my uncle. He had 42 amateur fights, won all 42, 41 by knockout. Al Weil, who handled Rocky Marciano, asked him to turn pro. He said, no, I'm not interested, all right? So he, again, 6 or 7, he takes me to my first fight. I'm sitting in the first row, and there's a fighter in the ring, and I'm watching, and my eyes are like wide open. The fighter, A, is in the corner, and the opponent is throwing punch after punch at, never hit him one, all right? And the fighter is slipping everything out. All of a sudden, he slips out of the corner, puts the opponent there, puts together 6, 7, 8 punch combination. The opponent starts falling. He holds back, all right? This is, again, my quote to my uncle. That is the most beautiful music I have ever seen. That's what I want to do, all right? That changed my life. The fighter was Willie Pep, all right? And just from that point on, I just became a nut. I started buying Ring magazine. I started learning the history, and it's just engulfed me. And believe me, I have no regrets, none. Anyway, I'm 13 years old. I'm in New York. I begged my mother to take me to Stillman's Gym, which was the gym in that time, managed and owned by a guy named Lou Stillman, legendary, who carried a gun, by the way. I mean, things were tough. He carried a gun, and in his office always carried it when he walked around. I'm 13, and there is Sugar Ray Robinson working out. I walk up to him, all right, when he just got done hitting the light bag, and I said, Mr. Robinson, my name is Don Elbaum, and I just started talking about the fights that he had, and he looks at me, and he said, how old are you? 30. He said, and you know this much about me? He gave me his phone number. From the age of 13 till he passed away, there is not a month, or just about, I shouldn't say that I did not talk to him. Now, I get a phone call. I'm operating out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I get a call from Ray. He said, Don, can you come to New York? So I jump in, I go to New York, go to his apartment in Harlem, and he says, I want one more fight. Who do you think I can beat that you can get where I can get one more world title fight? I said, Joey Archer. He says, can you get him? I said, yes. All right. I called Joey. All right. He said, Don, absolutely. All right. So I made the fight in Pittsburgh. So to build the fight up, I said, Ray, why don't we have 2 tune-up fights? Let's do one in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, then Steubenville, Ohio. And we'll do one 2 months before in Johnstown, a month before, and we'll just build this up bigger. And he says, great, we'll do this. In Johnstown, Pennsylvania, I built Ray Robinson up. This is the biggest thing since the Johnstown flood, all right? That's the way I made it, all right? And roughly a week or 10 days before the fight, I get a call from Willie Pep. Again, these guys are my idols. I'm like a school kid with fighters. I mean, just getting in the ring to me is like, wow, all right? I don't care whether you can fight or can't fight. There's just something about somebody. It's not football. It's not, 10 guys on a field. It's one-on-one, and there is nothing like it. And anyone that stepped in the ring can certainly tell you just the excitement in there, the roar of the crowd, and so forth. And Willie Pep calls me. He says, Don, I need a fight. He said, I need money. I said, what do you mean you need a fight? I said, Don, Willie, you can't fight. Please, you got to retire. You can't. And he said, Don, I need money. I said, what are you talking about? I said, you just can't. He said, Don, I got 5 ex-wives. I said, shit. So all of a sudden it hit me to put Willie Pep and Ray Robinson, 2 of the 10 greatest fighters, maybe 2 of the 5 greatest fighters of all time, in the same card. It took place in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, all right? And it was like, and that to me, with all the ups, and there's been great ups in boxing. That's just one of the greatest nights of my life.
Well, we have over here Mike Bellani, who is the preeminent promoter, the P.T. Barnum of Buffalo area, and he's done some crazy things. But he's a hype guy like you. You did some hype, a lot of hype on the Sugar Ray Robinson. In fact, as I recall a story, you actually had one of your colleagues go out and buy a couple of gloves that you were going to give to Sugar Ray. You want to share that story?
We got the press conference in Pittsburgh, and the place is packed. The writers came from Cleveland, came from all over, all right? And, we're there, and et cetera. And I said, at the front there, I said, Ray, I said, you're not going to believe this. No one knew this, what I was going to do. You're not going to believe this. I said, I'll be right back. I go in a room. I bring back 2 boxing gloves. I said, Ray, here are the gloves that you used in your professional debut like 20-some years ago. And he looked at it, and he says, how? I said, don't ask me. Just don't ask me. These are yours. And I got these 2 battered, old gloves, all right? And he's just holding them. He's got tears in his eyes, all right? And he puts them down, on the table. And all of a sudden, Al Abrams, who was the sports editor of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, the pictures, boom, 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 boom. And Al says, Ray, put on the gloves, put on the gloves. All of a sudden, I see something, and I'm stepping, I'm just hitting him on the leg, on the foot. Ray, don't, I mean, everyone's buzzing, and all of a sudden he sees what I do. The 2 right-handed gloves. So I mean, this is incredible. He says, I can't, like it was too emotional. And Al says, I understand. I mean, it was unreal.
So today, Don, this is the whole theme is shadow boxing with history, dealing with Muhammad Ali and the test of civil liberties. But you've actually had quite a few experiences and personal interactions with Ali. Do you want to share a few of those?
I was operating out of Detroit. This is the first time I met Ali. Angelo Dundee was Muhammad's trainer. He was Cassius Clay then. Angelo was a mentor to me. Angelo and Chris Dundee. Again, I started very young. I was actually writing for Ring magazine when I was 13 years old, writing about the fights in the Pittsburgh and Buffalo area. Not Buffalo, Pittsburgh and Cleveland area. And again, I'm in Detroit, and I get a call from Angelo. He says, Don, Cassius Clay is having his first fight in Madison Square Garden. Do you want to put your kid in there with him, Sonny Banks? I said, absolutely. So we make Banks and Cassius Clay.
Can I stop for just one second? This is unbelievable. Because I'm going to set the stage a little bit more here, Don.
Yeah.
The Jamestown area was blessed for many, many years to have a sports dinner where we brought in all the top athletes of the time. And the talent chairman was a guy named Cy Goldman of WJTN. And they'd bring in from the Jimmy Browns, the Mickey Mantles, Roger Marises, the Rocky Grazianos, Marcianos, Ezra Charles, Tony Zales, you name it. I got his files, Cy Goldman's files, and just yesterday found a letter to Mr. Goldman, dated December 11th, 1961. Dear Mr. Goldman, Mr. Fabersham will be back on the 15th. As I know his secretary notified you, they will be very prompt in your response to a request of him coming. I honestly feel that Cassius will be there. The only thing that will deter him will be that he may be fighting on the same day or the day after, which I can't determine at this time. He is a youngster that wants to keep busy, as he has in him his life goal to become the heavyweight champion of the world, and wants nothing to stand in his way. Very kind of you to give him this invite. Sincerely, Angelo Dundee, and this is December 11th, 1961. It just so happens the fight that precluded him from coming here was against a guy named Sonny Banks. Enter Don Elbaum once again.
Sonny could punch, all right? And I'm a type that when my fighters fight somebody, I study them like I just go over everything. I study plans and et cetera, and I talk to the trainer and so forth, my partner, whatever it is, about how we should fight him and et cetera. So everyone knows that, Clay at that time, which he's always done, he would get in, throw punches, step back with his hands down, all right? So I closed the gym, Kronk Gym, and Sonny's trainer was Luther Burgess, a hell of a featherweight that was trained by, from Detroit. Come on. The number one guy. Emmanuel trained Luther, and Luther became, I've got a word in boxing. There's 1,000 trainers. There's no teachers. Luther Burgess was a teacher, all right? And what we did was close the gym, and we brought sparring partners in. We had 3 sparring partners. I was just about as tall as Clay then. And we had them all coming in and then backing up, and Sonny would step over with a left hook. And we did this 10 rounds every day, 5 days a week, for 3 weeks prior to the fight. We go into the garden, 13,000 people in the garden, all right? And we got this thing. Sonny had all the guts, wasn't concerned, and the bell rings, all right? Boom, steps back. Sonny hits him with a left hook, and Clay goes down. The place erupts. There was only one problem. He got up. Anyway, I tell you, it was, what, the fourth round? Was it fourth round? Fourth round. He did predict he would stop in the fourth, which he did, all right? So that was my first thing with Muhammad. Number 2, he's fighting Doug Jones in Madison Square Garden. I was there, and like I said, Angelo Dundee, his trainer, an incredible guy. I was at the fight. The fight's over. It was a war. It was life and death. A lot of the writers thought Doug Jones won the fight. Angelo gets a hold of me right after the fight. He says, Don, I got to go and get our money and do everything at the garden. Please go back to the hotel and wait there for Cassius, all right? And because I want him to be with somebody. Angelo always got offbeat places. He didn't have him stay at the Waldorf or top places. He had him stay at just an ordinary spot simply because he didn't want the press and everyone to be hanging around. So, I'm there waiting for him. I'm outside, and he comes, all right? And the guy's like just coming up the steps of the hotel. He looked like a dead man. We go up to his room, and he breaks down crying. He said, this was hell. And he was crying. And, again, all of a sudden, you don't know what to do. Me, 5'7", Cassius Clay, and, I go to put my arm around him. I just didn't know what to do. But he must have cried for like 10 minutes, and I just sat there with him, all right? And, something that, anyway, that was that one. A lot more. You tell me when to stop.
Keep going. Well, I tell you what, I'll hit the bell.
Okay. I love this one. Well, there's 2 things. I'm promoting fights at the Tropicana Hotel in Atlantic City, and I'm living there. And Ali was living, he was Ali then, living in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And again, I had a real good, just a great relationship with him. I get a call from his wife. She says, Don, I got a problem. We have a problem. I said, what? She said, Muhammad and I were going out for dinner and then to a movie. Our babysitter just called, and she can't make it. Is there any chance? I said, are you kidding? I sat the twins when they were 3 years old, all right? I sat the twins, and that's like, wow. And another just incredible night, he's fighting George Cavallo in Cleveland. No one wanted him to fight in the States. All the writers were calling him the White Devil. This guy didn't have a racist bone in his body, but, a lot of white people, a lot of writers didn't believe that. And Angelo calls me, said, look, he's boxing George Cavallo in Toronto. I got my fighter, Louis Rodriguez, defending his title in Miami. Can you go up there and handle the gym and everything else for him until I get up there? I said, of course. He said, look, the way you make the money, I used to promote in Toronto. I wasn't living there then, but I went back up there. And he said, the way you make the money, your money, he said, charge whatever you want to charge at the gym, and you give Ali half of it, and you take half of it, all right? He was up there for 10 days training. This was ridiculous, all right? I'm charging $40, which is today would be like $100, $150. The gym held roughly 300 people. We had 400 people just about every day. $4,000 a day at Sully's gym. That means he's putting $2,000 in his pocket, I'm putting $2,000. In 10 days, he's made $20,000. We would go back to the motel. The first day, we went back to the motel, 25 kids came, from the neighborhood. And keep in mind, all they were talking about, they were ripping Ali in the New York papers and the TV. And again, the White Devils and boom, and they don't want him fighting America. That's why he went to Canada and etc. 25 kids came to the motel because they knew Ali was staying there. All right, they come in. This is the first day. He looks at them. He says, you, and you. Takes 3 kids. He says, go to the end of the parking lot there, the motel, run to the end there, and come back. All right, like a 30-second run. The kid that won, he gave him $100 to. The kid that came in second, he gave $50 to. The kid that came in third, he gave $20 to. The second day, there were 50 kids. And in that situation, 2 girls came in. He put the 2 girls together once against the slowest boy. One girl just outdid everyone, so he put her with the other. He just did incredible. He just know who to put. Every day, 100 to the winner, 50 to the kid came in second, 20 to the kid that came in third. He got rid of all of the money. In 10 days, he gave away $20,000. 50 kids. Out of those 50 kids, 1 was black. Everyone was white. He took some of the families into his room. All right, we had 4 rooms there, one for him, one for his family, one for sparring partners, one for myself. All right, and he took 2 families to the fights, got them tickets and etc. And that's a story that no one knows about. The guy was really. I'll tell you, I cried when he died. I choked up with him.
We should probably just, as we kind of draw a little bit of closure here, we did have a fight in Buffalo, the Blockbuster in Buffalo. You were part of that. Do you recall much about the litigation that was going? Because lawyers sort of drive those things a lot. But with regards to kind of the upcoming fight, Tony's stock had risen. He just beat James Bone Crusher Smith. The Blockbuster in Buffalo's coming. It's Don King promoting it. And yet you got a stake in the Tony TNT theme. Do you remember much about that?
Yeah, I remember it well. I remember all the problems I had with King. I know I've sued him. I mean, this is I had Simon Brown. I had Aaron Pryor, and one of the greatest fighters, of all time. I go out to Vegas. We do a fight out there. King's there, and again, by the way, when you were going over the rules. You may enjoy this about boxers and promoters. I have a contract. I do not ever sign contracts, state contracts, all right, with commissions. I have a civil contract. In my contracts, I am an advisor. My contracts are as an advisor. And by the way, I battled the New York Commission, the Ohio Commission, the Pennsylvania Commission, the Nevada Commission, all right? Louisiana, forget it, every place. And I do this openly. All of my contracts give me the exclusive right to hand pick the promoter. As I tell all commissions, I said, I'm going to take a fighter and take 2 years and build him up and make him 15-0, and all of a sudden he's ready to go in, and I got to give my fighter to Bob Arum, or I got to give him to Don King, because I can't manage and promote, and I'm doing all the work, and now they're going to get all of the, that ain't going to happen. I said, take me to court. Not one commission has taken me to court. Every single contract I have, I manage and I promote the fighter. And it stood up, all right? And my argument again, I mean, the stories, as Joe knows, and I'm sure, if you're in, you certainly know, I mean, the deals and the stealings, it's been incredible, just what's happened to fighters, and, I care for my fighters. I mean, I have a feeling. It's the greatest sport there is, man. There is nothing. It's one-on-one. I said this yesterday, and as Joe will tell you, anyone that's ever been in the ring, just when that bell rings, it's like, wow. And being an only kid, my father was president of the Temple Men's Club. My mother was president of the Hadassah. I know the most fearful time in my life is leaving the dressing room and walking into the ring. I used to say to myself, I want to go home and see my mother. I want to get her. But let me tell you, when that bell rings, wow, it's just a whole different ballgame, man. There's just a feeling. There's no drug that can make you that high. Well, maybe. Anyway, Don King, getting back to Don King, he went to steal Aaron Pryor from me after the Aguero fight, and he gave him $300,000 in cash, all right, and he signed a contract. And Pryor and King came to me. He said, I got a contract. And I said, Don, your contract's no good. He said, we can work something out. I said, we're not working anything out. And I went to take him to court, all right, and I told him I'm suing him for $5 million. And he gave me, I can't give you the figure. Is anyone from the IRS here? No. But it was a seven-figure thing that he actually gave me, he gave me just to walk away. We talk to each other now. We talk,
So give us your critique of Baby Joe Macy. There's a segue to what we're doing here in a few more minutes.
He could punch, and I think he got his reputation as a puncher. And by the way, George Lindbergh, I put in with you, and Brian Sargent. And let me tell you something fascinating about boxing. I don't know if you know about this. George Lindbergh is an ordinary heavyweight out of Akron, Ohio. He can punch, no chin, but the guy can punch. His most famous fight, I'm sorry, Joe, it wasn't you. It was against Butterbean, okay? Butterbean once knocked him out in 19 seconds, okay? And there's a story about that one, and which I got to tell you shortly. But anyway, if Joe is just like, there just aren't any Joe Messies around at this moment, all right? Wilder is the heavyweight champion. Believe me, Joe would beat him, all right? I think Wilder's good. I think he can punch. It's just really a shame that he's not here today, because I made this quote, what I'm about to tell you, about 2 years ago. And no one knows. We're talking about fighters and the money today. I said, there's a fighter out of Buffalo by Joe Messi. He would become the first $1 billion athlete. And I really, I was so high on him, man. Anyway, yes.
We're getting ready to top that. Ladies and gentlemen, Don Elbaum, Nick Rotsko.